Babushkas of Chernobyl is a story of an extraordinary community of women, older women, who live inside the Chernobyl exclusion zone in Ukraine. And they refused to be evacuated after the accident in 1986, or in some cases, in most cases, were relocated forcibly and then snuck back to their ancestral homes. So it's a story of the modern day exclusion zone, the unique people who live there, their resilience, their difficulties, their humor. It's really a portrait of a pretty unique place. I was first in the Chernobyl exclusion zone in 2010, reporting on the 25th anniversary of the accident. And as a part of that, stumbled across this reality that there were people living there, which is a story I certainly knew nothing about at the time. I went back about a month later and wrote an investigative print piece about this community, and then in 2012 started working on the documentary. So it's been a project that's been, like all documentaries, in the works for a while, but really pleased that it's out in the world now. Babushka is literally the Russian word for grandmother. All of the women who live in the zone are in their 70s or 80s, and they are a community of grandmothers. Well, there are, it's a complicated place full of a lot of suffering and misery and hardship. I mean, the people who live there lived through, Stalin's enforced famines in the 1930s, and then Nazi atrocities during the Second World War, and then Chernobyl. So it is a dark palette in many respects. And what the film shows is that it's the women don't have any regrets. I can say pretty firmly across the board, I didn't hear about anybody regretting coming back, and are very happy to be on their motherland, and attribute that to their longevity, really. They feel that if you leave, you die. You leave your home village, your soul goes with you. And they are very tied to their ancestral motherland. So on one hand, there's a groundedness and a sense of home that is very affirming in the film. On the other hand, clearly a lot of hardship, misery, but it all lives together there in the zone. Yeah, the people, there are characters in the film who were relocated, accepted their relocation, and live far outside the zone, but their ancestral village was within the 10-kilometer zone of the reactor. And then there are the film's main characters, 3 women who returned home. And, I think what's important in that, setting up that juxtaposition, is that the relocation trauma is something that doesn't get talked about a whole lot. And the people who left have suffered what relocated peoples do everywhere: higher levels of alcoholism, depression, unemployment, and very importantly, disrupted social networks. And I think that all those things lead to unhappiness and of course, less good health. And the women in the zone, of course, have been exposed to higher levels of contamination, but they avoided the trauma of relocation. So they say, and everybody there will tell you that that they've actually lived longer, and they attribute it to being on their motherland, being happy, and I would add, by avoiding this other the very real downsides, especially to the elderly, of relocation trauma. Food issues hard because very first rule of safety in the zone is not to eat any local food or drink any local drink, because it's all been grown in soil that is contaminated. But of course, eating and hospitality is very deep in the culture of the Babushka, and it's hard to show up and not have some dumplings before you start talking, and it's rude, really. As one character in the film put it, they get insulted, lethally insulted. But it is it is something reckless to do that, so we ate as little as possible. Let's put it that way. And we always brought food to them, which we could share together. There are a set of characters called stalkers, and they are young people, by and large men, some women, however, who are sneaking into the zone for, in some cases, for thrills, some cases to explore the strange rebound of wildlife that is there, and in some cases they're imitating a video game called Stalker. And this is a generation of young people who, whose generation was defined by the disaster and by reactor number 4, and in many cases it took the lives or severely damaged the lives of their parents and grandparents' generation, and yet they've never seen it. And so in a way, in one sense they are thrill seekers with maybe, a limited mission. But on another hand, I believe they are really, in their own way, like the Babushkas, seeking home and finding a part of their story, their generation's story, that they have never experienced before.